And this is reporting from the venue of World Economic Forum's the Summer Davos 2018. And today we have two honored guests joining us. First we have Jules Chappell, currently the representative for the Mayor of London's office, and also the directing manager of the London and Partners. Welcome.
Thank you.
And also we have James Lee, the President and CEO of E.J. McKay, a Shanghai-based investing banking group. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So today, our topic will be a little bit broad. How, in what way China could, or what China could do to today's world economy. So it's a very broad topic, right? But we can narrow it down, and the setting in the background that this year is actually the 40th anniversary of China's reform and opening up. And also, it's been 5 years since the President Xi Jinping proposed the Belt and Road Initiative. And we can also look at what is happening around the world. Maybe Jules has something to say about London, because I couldn't help but notice that, a couple of days ago, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, called for a second EU referendum, which the Prime Minister refused categorically. So I can sense this kind of sentiment, this kind of anxiety on the part of London. So how would you characterize the scale of the impact of Brexit on London and UK in general?
I think what is difficult for entrepreneurs, wherever they are, any side of the border, has been the uncertainty. That has been very difficult, and there certainly has been an impact. But the fundamentals of London are very, very strong. And actually, when I was looking at some of the FT data before coming out to the World Economic Forum, and it tracks inward investment projects, tracks 11,500 cities around the world. And for the most recent data, so July 2017 to July 2018, London is still the biggest destination city for inward investment projects, also the biggest source. So I think this kind of international trade is built into London's DNA, very, very strong financial. James will talk about as well, in terms of the largest trading floor for foreign exchange, including RMB, the largest outside of mainland China, second largest asset management business, world's fourth largest insurance company, world's largest insurance market, leaders in infrastructure finance, which obviously we'll talk about the Belt and Road. So I think these fundamentals for a city that ultimately has been around for 2,000 years, it's a very adaptable, resilient city that reinvents. So I think for London, the uncertainty has been difficult. It's been quite a long period. We're looking forward to that hopefully coming to an end fairly soon. But in terms of the actual fundamentals of trading and continuing to innovate, I think the fundamentals are still very strong.
So very strong momentum so far, because we still have 6 months to look before UK formally withdraw from EU. And for James, how would you characterize the investment environment, of UK? I trust that you have some business associates in London and the UK. How would you see this investment environment, at the background of Brexit?
Interesting question. We certainly have been doing and will continue to do our transaction investment activities in the UK, and for a number of reasons. One is, as Jules said, actually UK has one of the best fundamentals in the world. First of all, it's English speaking, and don't take this lightly, because if you go to any other country, chances are that a lot of the locals, certain people do speak English, but lots of people do not, and that makes it actually challenging. Let's say if you work in Germany, the manufacturing site, then I think the executives can speak English to you, but the workers probably not. And then also the industry standard, the machines, a lot of things are not in the language that your production people can read. So actually the very simple but forgotten fact is that you go to London, actually you can talk to anyone. Now this is, on top of this, another thing very, very important, I think, to investors from elsewhere is the rule of law. Again, this is taken for granted in Western Europe or in the UK, but for Chinese investors, usually they don't really look at one country, but they look at the whole world. And then certain countries in the world have a reliable set of rule of law where if you don't know what the unknowns, then the rule of law can actually protect you. So I think really the language part and then also the rule of law. And in addition is that London and also the UK has been very open, inclusive actually culturally to the rest of the world. You can see a lot of Indians, a lot of Chinese, and actually lots of Russians and also Europeans from other parts of Europe. So I think the broad coverage of the UK and then the mature set of jurisdiction and also the ease with which you can communicate with the whole country makes it an ideal investment destination for Chinese companies.
Yeah, so I can see that you guys are still very optimistic about the prospect of London being the international financial center because after all, it's been a financial center for centuries. So we didn't see what is going to happen in the next 6 months. But what is happening right now in China is actually there's a financial opening up. There's a lot of measures, process going on. So, Jules, do you see this as an opportunity or a challenge for London?
I see it as a really exciting opportunity because of those links between China and London. It's a simple thing, as you say, but when you have these kind of cultural connections, I mean, for example, the largest Chinese New Year celebrations anywhere in the world outside of China are in London. I mean, there's a very, very strong community and affinity and understanding. And I think from the financial opening up, I mean, one example would be on Belt and Road Initiative, where a lot of the financing for what is ultimately, a huge program and very complex in terms of financing. There's been a lot of work done between, for example, the Green Finance Committee in China and the Green Finance Initiative in the UK around how you raise green bonds, including through, for example, the London Stock Exchange, to allow the financing for such huge investment infrastructure. So I think that's the kind of thing where actually having an opening up, there could be really great opportunities on both sides.
You're also the London and Shanghai stock connection.
Yes, which is happening, later this year. And again, I mean, I think that just in terms of facilitating connectivity between investors and projects, I think that, again, and it's something that we're very proud of, because I think it is the first time that an external stock market is being connected in this way. So that's a great source of pride for London.
But you see that after this financial opening up, China or Shanghai, for that matter, will be more competitive in a way. They will challenge. Do you think we challenge the status of London? Do you feel threatened in a way?
Not threatened, genuinely excited, but it's because London innovates. It can't stand still. Otherwise, it's not just China. You have to keep innovating. And I think this is where, if anything, I do think I'm pleased to see a change in the sense that China has always invested in London, but there's been a growing trend towards investing in each other's technology. And I think that is really, really important because fintech, UK has Europe's largest technology ecosystem and financial, and it's come together with some pretty positive regulators as well. There is so much that we can learn from each other, and we also have a very fast adopting consumer base. And that, again, is something that we share in common with China. In fact, I think in the world it was sort of China, India, the UK. So I think these are all areas where we will learn from each other and we will push each other to innovate. We have to. That's how we stay competitive.
And for Jane, how do you think about this financial opening? What kind of new opportunities do you expect for your business?
I think opening up and introduction of competition is always good for the industry and also for the economy. Competition really means better service, and companies work harder to innovate. And on one hand, consumers, customers, and whoever receive the services will kind of get better services and better deal. But on the other hand, actually, I think the innovation part that will lead to a lot of positive changes. I mean, if you want to draw on another industry that in the past had like the regulatory protection, the automotive industry, think about it. When the Chinese big autos are protected, with the hope that they can roll out some, let's say, local brands at the end of the day. Actually, the biggest Chinese state-owned auto companies that really are rolling out Volkswagen and Toyota down the road. It is actually the small companies that 20 years ago that didn't receive so much attention that came out with Cherry, Genie, EVs, and then they end up buying over. Right? So I think competition, as long as under a fair set of rule of law and rules, actually benefits not only consumers but also benefits the players. And I don't see really London and UK and China as competitors in finance because there's just so much the two sides can complement each other. So there are certain ways things are done in Europe and in London that are efficient, but there are certain other ways that things are done in China that are more efficient, and when they come together, they actually can create a lot more synergy.
Is there any specific promising prospect in Shanghai, where your company is based?
We are based in Shanghai, but also Beijing and Shenzhen and other parts of the world. I think one is the capital flows becomes both ways, and then the ownership. I think we can expect foreign ownership to rise in Chinese financial institution, and I do think that especially after the financial crisis 10 years ago, a lot of the large established international banks have stronger, more rigorous risk control mechanisms, which actually can be introduced into the Chinese financial institutions, especially on leverage and risk control and all of these things. And you can imagine if you own 20% of a firm, how much motivation you have to ensure that this particular company, which actually can be your investment but also can be a competitor. But what if you own 40%? You probably have a lot more motivation to make sure they're successful for your own interest. So I see that opportunities, capital flows both ways, and then the aligned interest to make stronger interest to make Chinese financial institutions more profitable, stronger, and also more sustainable, and vice versa. The other way around is also true that there is a lot of capital in China that's seeking diversification opportunities and returns, and actually London being the hub, at least of Europe, actually offers the kind of return and also risk profile that you cannot find in a single geography.
Yeah, but do you see any kind of risk, potential problems after the financial opening up? Any problems coming to your side?
I think this comes basically you need to implement strict and tested set of rule of law and policies, because when capital flows more freely, then you can imagine some, let's say, certain institutions will always behave properly. Firms like HSBC behave properly, but then there are certainly speculators who might do things that profit themselves, but may not be completely compliant. And this is the group of or the kind of capital that you want to watch over carefully, so that the opening does not lead to manipulation or let's say inappropriate use of the benefits.
So we've been talking about this opening up, China opening up to the world, but also China actually has been going out to the world. That is the Belt and Road Initiative. So what kind of opportunities do you think present for London, for UK, and what has it done, in the past 5 years?
Well, I think it is an extraordinarily ambitious project, which
Exactly.
but I admire
$1 trillion.
I think Londoners love bold, big, bold ideas, and this is one of them. And so I think, from energy and momentum, but also collaboration, which again, at a time where there are disruptive forces, I think, where there is collaboration, and again, your point around respect and rule of law and doing things together properly, I think all of that is a positive thing. But I mean, I mentioned specifically the opportunity around the financing, but of course then the professional services that go with that. I mean, again, you mentioned insurance, but again, all those professional services, I think, is a big opportunity for London. We do see ourselves as the western end, the very end, and obviously China Investment Company's got a 10% holding in Heathrow Airport Holdings. So I think, that whole kind of investment into infrastructure, but done in a collaborative way that is reinforcing positive working together, I genuinely feel is a very positive thing.
So James, do you think the same? Do you think this Belt and Road Initiative facilitated your business in the past 5 years as well?
Well, this is, of course, the Belt and Road Initiative certainly helps in that there is both government support and also capital for Chinese organizations to go through, I guess, the land route of the Silk Road all the way. I guess that's London. But there are certain challenges we have. I think in more recent years, than Chinese investment acquisition in the tech sector has been under stricter scrutiny. Sometimes I think probably without a strong basis, because if you have the same set of law, then if you want to sell a company to the Americans, to the Chinese, or to the Norwegians, should be the same. But I think in more recent years, this has been becoming more challenging, and we hope that people can look at China and also China investment as basically part of the ordinary economic activities, because intention of not letting China upgrade its technology is actually naive, because what's going to happen is going to happen. Chinese people are going to make better things and also improve their efficiencies in production and do things better. Whether you like it or not, if you're used to it or not, does not matter. It will happen. It's like a child. If a child is going to grow up, he's going to grow up, and nothing can stop that. But you either face it and then embrace it, or you pretend that you don't like to see it, but it's still going to happen. So I'm not really pointing this at London, but you do see that 5 years ago, investment from China was much more warmly welcomed than today. And today, I think there's concern that China might buy the technology. But you think about it, if people want to pay for a technology, you don't sell it to them, or you sell it to them. It's very simple. If you don't like it, don't sell it. If you like it, then sell it, and then you have the law. Then just if you comply with the law, just do it. And what if then if you don't have a problem selling the same thing to the American, then you shouldn't have the same thing concern about selling to the Chinese, because as I said, we should respect the rule of law, and then you just don't come up with new extra stuff that deviates from the basic fundamental belief. So there are challenges, but I think once people get used to it, that at the end of the day, we are actually the same people, and then we're gonna do what we need to do. Then I think things will become let's say normalized.
We think that a lot of people have been taking for granted that the Belt and Road Initiative has been just for the developing countries. What has it actually done for the developed country in Europe?
Yeah, it's funny because sitting in London, I don't see it like that. I see it as a global initiative. As I say, it has brought opportunities in terms of particularly around the financing. But I think it's seen as much as anything as a big vision and leadership, and not exclusively within emerging markets at all, but as China in a global leadership role, making a big investment in the future of collaboration globally. So that's how it's interpreted, certainly personally. But that's more how I hear it talked about in a place like London.
Yeah. Let's go to a grander view. With the interaction between China and the world. James talking about some of the uncertainties he's faced, some of the like the lack of law or any other unstable environment for business investment. So what kind of uncertainties and challenges do you think is the most dangerous or the most challenging to the connectivity in today's world?
Well, I think we are seeing challenges, and we sat here in the World Economic Forum, it'd be wrong not to mention the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I think that does entail the biggest challenges that we are seeing now through some of the political disruption, because I think it is around the fact that we as cities need to adapt at a pace and a scale that we just have not had to do before. So the future of work changing so quickly, which means skills need to change. It means everything around how we are working and interconnecting needs to change, and that is difficult. Humans aren't particularly naturally good at change, and the worry is that some parts of our society are able to adapt and be more resilient, and they will benefit and they will thrive with new opportunities, but that where communities are left behind, then you build up resentment, and that is not good for any of us. And so I think where I see the challenges, as I say, is where change is happening and entrepreneurs and innovators and tech is skipping ahead, and we're all connected and collaborating and doing very well, but making sure that we're not leaving whole communities behind, because as I say, that will ultimately catch up with everyone.
But there's a point of view that with the growing interdependency in the world, there's a growing vulnerabilities for the countries. Do you concur with that point, James?
I think if you look at, now you say the world becomes more interdependent. Of course, that is true. When you pull out your telephone, your mobile phone, your computer, it's all made and assembled from all over the world. And does it make it more risky? Probably a little bit on the supply chain side. But if you look at the micro level, even within a country, let's say within the UK or within Germany, when you make something, then you also are interdependent upon different regions and different suppliers. And by nature, that's not all that different if you really think we're all the same. So I think the risk factor, if you have any, is similar in nature to something within the same country, just supply chain. But I do concur with Jill's remark that I think growth needs to be inclusive, because if you leave people behind, that certainly will lead to first unhappiness, bad life, and then resentment, and then that's going to lead to further complications, security problems, and all sorts of things.
You see it as a general trend.
I think because people have been talking about inclusive growth for I guess 50 years, but does it really happen? There are a lot of efforts. And then also, one thing, if you have to see the risks, I think it's a rise of nationalism in a lot of places. And the world after really after the war, the world has progressed so much. The American had a black president, and a lot of countries have female presidents, and people can live together happily. There's no major war, and all of these as a peace is a single singular factor that lead to all the growth. If you have a war, you're not going to have any of these. So my concern is that basically, if the sentiment, the sort of extremist sentiment that lead to separatist movements, then it's just going to be a lose-lose situation for all people. So I think really interdependence and inclusive dialogue, and we live all on the same earth, and then life will be easy and simple.
So while we're on this subject of the global connectivity and China's opening up, I want to ask a very cliche question. I hope I can get some very novel answers. Why is China an important destination for trade and investment? What's been different answer to that question? In the past 40 years, you see as a development events.
The obvious answer is, of course, scale. But beyond that, I think it is the innovation. And I think where things are changing, for example, around intellectual property, where I think I'm right in saying China is the biggest applicant now for intellectual property guarantees, and therefore the standards, again, when we come back to rule of law and applying each other's standards, I think that has been a transformational, you say about a journey, I think that's been one of the more important things, that then means that when it comes to trade and investment, there is that common understanding and a sort of understood rule book where you can trust each other. And I think that is what, certainly from London's point of view, that's what starts to make it so exciting, is that this is something that we can share tech and we can collaborate. And for example, Babylon, which is one of the London-based unicorns, just a couple of days ago announced a new big investment, but is partnering with the likes of Tencent. And it's where our ambitions can become bigger because they're shared with your ambitions. And that I think, as I say, is very exciting for
the city. Is it because of the market or because Tencent is an innovative company?
Both. I genuinely believe that. I think both, in the sense of what you're seeing coming out of China. And I think it's, that there is this, when there's a determination, and I think, China does have a point to prove in terms of its role in the world. And I think that, and London actually, when we talk about any kind of silver lining, I think where London is feeling we need to innovate and we need to be better than ever because we are in complex times. I think that kind of determination, particularly when you have got groups of entrepreneurs sat with incredible universities, some of the best universities in the world in London, some of the best universities in the world in China, sat with investors, regulators, all of whom are kind of you get that convergence. That's where I think you see really exciting innovation. I think you see that in London, I think you see it in China.
And what would be your answer, James, to this same question from the
I
perspective
think,
of Chinese?
It is actually Chinese people's willingness and also readiness to embrace new ideas, really the open-mindedness to embrace new ideas, and also willingness to reflect on themselves. When I say this is very simple, when you bring something to China, Chinese people are willing to look at it and think actually whether it's good or not. The very simple answer, look at it on the streets, what kind of cars are running on China's streets. But you'll see Japanese cars, you see European cars, you see American, and you see Chinese cars too. So it's very simple, if a car is better, it's a better deal. People are going to make decisions. It doesn't matter what's the brand, whether, or either Japanese, German, or actually sometimes Chinese. So people basically think that, okay, anything that comes, let's think about it. And if it's nice, let's go for it, right? And then I recently came back from London, so we look at, let's say, which is a pretty public things, companies. So there's a brand called Mothercare, which actually is very, very successful in China. So people here think that's wonderful. I think when I look at the stock market performance, it's weak actually. But Chinese people think that's British brand, and it's a nice thing. So people actually embrace it, and it has such an sterling reputation in the market. So when people see something, they're willing to think, and that's actually very valuable because in certain more mature and established markets, people think, okay, this is the way we do things, and you have something new. I look at it suspiciously. Here, people have something new. They also look at it, suspiciously, but they're much willing to embrace it. And that means not only because we've got over 1 billion people, but these people are actually willing to look at your innovation, your offering, your services, and if it's good, then we're going to go for it.
So James talking about this inclusiveness and openness to difference. So I think Linda might share some of the perspective of that. It's also in the DNA of the city, right?
It absolutely, it's funny because when you were saying that, I hadn't picked up, but I reflect that back. I think that's exactly perhaps why there is such a good connection. Because London's a place where 300 plus languages are spoken. You can come from anywhere and find somewhere where you can dance and enjoy music and food. There's actually, forgive me, you said be informal. One of my favourite quotes is actually from Paddington Bear, which is in London anyone can fit in because everyone's a bit different. But I love that because it's true. And as I say, a third of Londoners come from outside the UK, and that is very much part of its DNA. That that it's not just it's celebrated. It's not just something that people talk about. They bat off each other, and that's what makes it a very creative place.
Yeah. So in the final stage of the interview, I want you guys to say something for a city. So you're talking about this inclusiveness of London. Past centuries actually. What do you think where do you think it's going to go?
I mean, to finish where I started, London is a very resilient place. So 2,000 years of history, and I think it will continue to have this very strong international outlook because that is London, as you say, it's in its DNA. And so I think it will continue to have those very strong global relationships. The biggest investors into London are America and China. But I think it will also continue to collaborate unbelievably closely with Europeans. 1 million Europeans live in London. And I think whilst politics can be very complex and very high pressure and high stakes, actually when you talk to businesses, the biggest frustration is lack of clarity because they just want to get on with it. And that's, I think, we're 6 months to go. at some stage things will become clearer, and I think then people will get on with it. And so I think pragmatism eventually, when there's a bit more clarity, pragmatism will win through, because it's so fundamental, this ability and desire to connect and to collaborate. That is what London is all about. So I think it will carry on doing that.
So James, so after the 40 years of reform and opening up, and also this is still going on, this policy. So what do you think, where do you think Shanghai's position will be in the next decade?
Shanghai will continue to open and also continue to attract a lot more attention in the capital. But I think there is competition because as the world converges, and also because of technology, your geographical location may not be as critical as in the past. So Shanghai will compete against Hong Kong. Also is taking a lot of measures to become more competitive. And as I just said, because of technology, your geographical location becomes less important. And Hong Kong is completely, English speaking. That means the rest of the world's capital can go into Hong Kong, but then a lot of capital cannot come to Shanghai because they cannot read your reports. So Shanghai will put in, its own efforts to be more attractive, but it has to actually face lots of competition and fair competition. At the same time zone with Hong Kong, there they have mature capital markets and lots of talent, and also actually come closer to London. But London also is very attractive for Chinese domestic firms to be listed there and to do business there. So competition will lead to innovation and also better services to customers. But if you don't work hard, then you might be left behind. So let's hope Shanghai will work hard and keep its position.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. So this is so much for today's interview, and I hope you enjoyed our show, and thank you too for joining us today. And there will be more of a talk show on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter live show. So please keep following us on China Xinhua News. So this is so much for today. See you next time. Bye-bye.